Hello, welcome to the Hive With Us podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Martinez. Today we have a special guest, Mr. Eddie Wilson. Eddie Wilson, what part of the country are you from, and where are we speaking from today?
Jacksonville, Florida, Ponte Vedra Beach area.
Jacksonville, Florida. So we actually have a long history. I've known of you since like 2008.
Okay.
So it's been 15 years or so. I grew up in Hammond,
Okay. Very cool.
so
Way back.
way back. It feels like ancient history.
That does. That seems like two lifetimes ago.
So I actually, and it was kind of circling back, but back then you were a big deal. I'm not saying you're not a big deal now, but I remember I was going to House Anderson, and
Yeah.
I remember you were, and I don't know, what happened back then, but you were planning to teach at the college. I'm like, man, I need to go to the college because Eddie Wilson's going to teach there. I didn't know exactly what you were doing, but I knew you were doing something amazing. And like I was 17, 18 years old at the time, and I had like no ambition, no direction. So I'm like, I need to learn something from this person that's going to
Wow.
teach at the college. I ended up going, and then you never showed up.
I don't remember that. I taught at quite a few colleges. I mean, I taught at Hiles Anderson for a little while and taught at various universities. But yeah, sorry I missed you.
It was just timing, and like I know things happen, and it was just crazy. But I remember it was like a really like core memory, and like it's great to have you here now because it's just like
Full circle.
15 years has happened now. I'm
Yeah.
doing things, you're doing things. I kind of found my direction in life, and like I definitely didn't have it back then,
Sure.
but now I've kind of delved down this path, and here we are doing real estate.
That's awesome. Very cool.
So for everyone that doesn't know you, because I need a highlight reel for like the past 15 years, because I back then you were doing radio and all this stuff, and now you got like thousands of multifamily doors and 90 businesses and all this stuff. So can you give everybody like a 30-second brief description of who you are, what you do now, and let's
Yeah.
kind of jump into it.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I really exist in kind of three areas. I'm a corporate leader, so I still own a bunch of companies. I've had a bunch of exits. Exited over 100 companies now. I currently own 27 companies that we own and operate. So I'm always buying and selling businesses. I'm an investor. That's kind of the second bucket. So whether it's private equity, multifamily, there's really not a deal that I'm not interested in. I'm a deal junkie for sure. And then the altruist side, like I love to create to give back. And so I have a very large nonprofit, international nonprofit that exists in over 108 countries and exists to really do good in the world. And so those are the three areas of my life over the past 15 years, probably since you saw me. I built an empire, sold an empire, building a second empire, and it's been quite a wild ride.
All right. Let's jump into it. I'm excited. I'm excited. So let's jump into business. I want to cover like
Yeah,
each one, and we're gonna kind of cover each little topic through the end. I think we'll end up with philanthropy at the end. But let's jump in business. So buying and exiting businesses. I think this is where you've been doing this
year.
for. You've been doing that for even before real estate,
Yes.
from my recollection. How did you get into that? What was like the quick story of your first
Sure.
buy? Did you buy it seller finance? Like it was $1 million
Yeah.
business, or was it a $500,000 business? Because like everybody wants to like
Right.
do this, but like where do
Yeah.
people start?
So I actually did not start on a traditional path. I was in television and radio and had the fortunate opportunity to sell a TV show to Fox and had a little bit of capital. And then I built my own advertising agency. And through a bunch of circumstances, which these kind of all predate, what you're talking about in 2008, these predate that. I had my first exit, which was an advertising agency and I was taken advantage of. And while I sold and I made lots of good money, I left a lot of money on the table. And I remember that day, like finding gratitude in the moment, just like I'm so grateful that I have this opportunity, but also frustration in that I could have done this better. And making a promise that day that I'm never going to sit at a table like this and be taken advantage of like this. Like I can create win-win scenarios where one person doesn't have to sit across the table and lose. Like we can both win. And so I began to perfect that process of buying, selling businesses. And I built up until 2019, I had 86 operational companies. We sold 76 of those in 2019 for 1.2 billion. And it was just this crazy kind of full circle moment. But really, right now there are 15 million baby boomers that have businesses that within the next 7 to 10 years they'll walk out, they'll take that open sign and turn it to close, and they'll never walk back in. And they want a potential exit. They want some value out of their business. They don't want to just walk out and never come back in. And they don't have a son or a daughter that's in the wings, ready to take the business. They don't have some suitor because they've never thought about this moment. They don't have this planning mechanism. Like I have a very specific way that I do businesses. I have 5 phases, and my last phase is succession. What do I do when I hit my peak? And I'm planning that from the very beginning. Most baby boomers today, they're, a chiropractor, they're a dentist, or they're an electrician, and they didn't have a succession plan. And so what they'll do is they'll let all of their contacts, all the relationships will just go back into the general marketplace, will essentially be consumed by additional people that have similar businesses. But you could buy those at very small value, and you can own or finance. You can do a rev share. Most of these people don't know what their value is worth. And so it's very easy to buy businesses today because there's so many people that are trying to find succession. But there is no success without a successor. And there has to be somebody that's willing to take on the responsibility. But right now, it's so much cheaper to actually buy a business, retain the clients that they already have and have spent a lifetime serving, than to go out, create a new business, create a new brand, create all kinds of marketing, attract new customers. To me, it's diminishing returns today. And so why not just go buy a business? A good friend of mine, Cody Sanchez, talks about she's like, just go buy boring businesses, go buy a laundromat, go buy whatever. It's like they're out there for the taking.
Amazing points. Were you doing like a roll up, or was this just like
I've done
did
I've
you?
done multiple roll-ups, and there are lots of strategies and roll-ups, in service-based companies like HVAC and electrical, but also like dentistry and orthodontic practices. Like I've done some roll-ups. I actually have a very specific way of doing private equity. So I believe in building community and then doing data
Yeah,
science on the community and then serving that community with products or services. So like for instance, I built years ago, 2013, I built a company called Think Realty. It's one of the largest real estate media platforms in the world. We have about 1 million people touch the platform. It's got magazines and conferences and all that type of stuff. But I built one of the largest insurance companies inside of that space that then I exited from. Why did I build the insurance company? Well, because it was one of those needs that community said that they had. So I
yeah.
don't necessarily like going out into like red ocean and trying to find my way through it and carving paths through the jungle. Like what I like is finding a group of people that I can serve. They identify and tell me their needs. I buy or I build a company to suit those needs. And oftentimes I don't have to sell them. What they're doing is they're taking a line item on their P&L or their balance sheet, and they're just like, well, if I'm already spending money on insurance, would I be willing to spend it with Eddie? It's like, sure, I'll move that money over. And then, there's less resistance to capturing the economics of that community because they already know, like, and trust you. So if you look at how I've built every private equity deal, it's always tied to community. Right now I have Think Realty, it's real estate investment. I have the American Association of Private Lenders I built, which is a large aggregation of private capital, the largest actually. I have the Aspire Tour, which is thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs every single month. I have a group called Money Is, which is with my partner Andrew Cordell, which is all people that are trying to invest. I have FitCon, which is the world's largest fitness convention. Like you just go down that path. Like all I'm doing is building massive communities, and then I serve those communities through the businesses that I build.
I love the community aspect of it. I think a lot of people they go after like the client based side of it, but if you build off community, you can really
Right.
leverage and service those people because I think great businesses are built off community. It's such a
Yeah.
great little analogy. What's one of the biggest ways to build and create community and keep them in
Yeah,
community?
so
Start
community
with
is
that.
usually tied to one of two things. One, geographical location and commonalities. Or two, it's typically content, right? So you have to find what content or need a grouping of people desires and then serve them with it. It's like I do a lot of events. Those events, I don't necessarily make a lot of money on, but what it does is it pulls the people into a geographical location with a commonality. And so I believe that content always serves the community best. podcast, groups, social groups, meetups, like all that type of stuff. To me, people want to build community around content and their desires. And so it really doesn't matter what it is. There's a group out there for everything.
Mhm. Absolutely. I think it's funny because that's one of the things that I have my own community and I'm building my own community. That's why I asked
Sure.
that question. And then I do annual events where I bring community
Right.
together once a year, and that's kind of I've been doing it
Super
3 years.
powerful.
And it's one of those things where like I don't know how I'm going to do it for, but like I enjoy going because it's an opportunity for
Right.
community to come together. And just the symbolism of that. Who cares how many
Right.
people show up? The same time people that show up, I mean, we're gonna have a
Exactly.
blast.
Yep.
It's fun stuff. Another business question I have is, what's your favorite business that you've either owned or still own that you've held in your
Yeah,
portfolio?
I mean, I fall in love with every business I have. I mean, that's the nature of the deal. It's like whether it's a real estate asset or a business, I fall in love with all of them. But I think the one that I'm most particular toward today is the coffee brand. So, 4 years ago,
Okay,
I brought a guy down, which you probably, I don't know if you remember him or not, Doug Cole, which is kind of from that general area that you grew up in. I brought him down to Atlanta, and he was a coffee roaster, and he began to roast coffee with me. Now we're on our fifth shop. We got a mobile shop as well. We're building 5 more stores all over Florida and Georgia. I'm a coffee fanatic and traveled the world drinking great coffee and came back to Atlanta and was like, Atlanta's coffee culture just isn't fantastic. And so I want to solve that. Brought Doug into it. So it was my vision. I funded it, and it's like, and I love coffee, and I love that coffee to me represents community. And so in every one of those little shops, there's so much camaraderie and community that happens in there. And so it's like it stands for what I do, and then I give a percentage, like our entire brand. The coffee brand is called Because Coffee. That's the beans. That's the roastery. Then our retail shops are called the Myth and Legend Coffee Shop, right, or Coffee House. And so because coffee, the beans, it's amazing coffee. It's all specialty roast, high grade coffee. But then we give a portion of the proceeds away back to the nonprofit, which is my real passion. So it's like it kind of ties everything that I'm about into one. And so that's the one that if I ever get the big offer on the exit, I'm gonna have a really hard time exiting from.
okay, okay. I like that. I like that coffee. I love that. You found. I think you're a deal and real
Oh,
estate
sure,
junkie. It sounds like.
absolutely,
I think it kind of fits a lot of people's
yeah,
personalities, but I think you're like, man, I love every
yeah,
single one of them. They're all amazing. Like, how can I let it go? Or like, you're like, I don't know if I could
yeah.
let it go. So let's talk about that. Like, how, like, where is the point where is the number good enough, or is like you're ready to move on to the next thing? Like,
Yeah.
is it the number? Is it you're handing it off to a good person that's going to do good
Mhm.
things with it? Like, what's that exit
Yeah,
look like?
so there's 5 phases to every business and really life. The 5 phases are startup. That we start with a predetermined amount of time and predetermined amount of money. Then we move into perseverance. This is when we're in the pre-profit phase. We're in and out of profitability. We're bootstrapping everything. We're throwing people at things. We're wearing 5 hats. We move into viability. That's when we've got enough capital to do what we need. We got the right people in the right seats. We have operational standards and structures. Then we move into scale, right? Like now, what can I do? If I pour gas on this fire, how big can I get it? That's what I live for right there. Is I push so hard to get into viability because I won't scale something unless it's truly viable. And then I love the ride of going from viability to scale. But then once I get it to what I believe is my potential, then I either find someone to run it for me, which, at one time I had 86 companies and I didn't run the 86 companies. I had 86 CEOs that were running the companies, and so I get it to either whatever level I want to, or I may push a leader to get it to whatever level they're capable of. And then the succession plan. Then succession, there are some businesses I'll probably never let go of, like coffee and others. But succession might be selling it, might be passing it on to an owner, another owner. But it's like real estate is a little bit different for me. I'm a third generation real estate investor. Grandpa's a real estate investor. Dad's a real estate investor. And so, real estate, while I love real estate is where I'm parking my wealth and creating a long term path for future and endowments and all that type of stuff. I really have like 3 buckets. My first bucket is active income. I create active income through my businesses. Then I took that active income and I pushed into my passive income, which are all my real estate doors. And so I have a ton of real estate doors, over 4,000, lots of multifamily, some single family, and some commercial. And you kind of mix all that in. But really, that's a place where I'm holding, right? Like I don't do flips and stuff like that. Periodically, I'll sell something here or there. But for the most part, I'm holding. And then that's for long-term generational wealth. It's tax strategies, it's so on and so forth. Then I have what's called my institutional bucket, which is like when I'm moving that passive capital into self-directed structures, infinite banking, endowments for my nonprofit. It's like I just have this massive waterfall effect. And so all of those strategies play into it, right? Like businesses, are generating capital, and I want them to scale. But when you get, then it rolls into passive, then it rolls into more institution. But you say like, well, how big is big enough? For me, you get to the end, and if you go follow that entire circle, you get to the end, which to me is all about purpose. It's about my passion. It's about doing massive things around the world and creating impact. My entire nonprofit's called Impact Others. And so you get to the end and it's like, well, how many people do you want to impact? Well, based on the fact that I want to impact the entire world, it's like what it does is it creates this infinite structure from the very beginning. It's like, well, how many businesses? Well, as many as I can get. How much real estate? As much as I can amass. How many dollars should flow into an institution? Well, enough that I create enough impact. And so I'm so hyper focused on the impact that's all the way downstream that everything in the beginning is just a machine to get it there. If that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. It takes the impact vision is so large. It takes lots of energy and resources to create that
Right.
flow to create the
Yeah.
impact you want.
So that's why people say to me, when is enough enough? Well, I mean, enough was enough 20 years ago. Like I had enough wealth and enough things that I could sustain my lifestyle. Then I turned into, well, it's not about me. It's not about my family. It's about the outreach. It's about what am I doing around the world. And so like from my perspective, there's never enough because if ultimately that enough is serving someone else, I care about the people that we're impacting. I don't really care about the deals anymore.
I think it's having a grander vision. I have this theory where I'm like I've done pretty cool things, and I know I'm gonna amass other. I'm very young. I'm amass to do greater things beyond that. But I think the bigger thing is that you have the ability, time, health to do so. Why
Right.
not do it?
Agreed.
Why not do it? Like not everybody has this ability to create and do amazing things, and they just cut it off. Like I'm just gonna retire and live on
Yeah.
Barbados for and like why? Like you have the ability and the option to create and do
Sure.
amazing things. So
And
why
and
stop there?
honestly, like as a creator, most people that are in that spot, the last thing you want to do is shut that off. It's like I get the question that I get asked all the time is like work life balance. I hate that conversation because like work is life to me, and life is work,
Yeah.
and there is no balance. Like I'm all in, and so like I get it. I mean, you should take time to enjoy the fruits of your labor and take a rest and stuff like that. But I enjoy the impact I'm making so much that like I get so much more joy and fulfillment out of that than like taking a vacation. And so like I tried to retire for a little while and it just doesn't work for me. Like I don't get the same joy and fulfillment out of that. Like I get joy and fulfillment out of work that creates impact.
No, I understand
Mhm.
what you're saying. I understand what you're saying. It's and to up to people listening to this maybe in the future, like that sounds crazy. Like I want to go on
Sure.
vacation. Like, but like the when you get in the position to make such a big impact, there's that self fulfillment. Like it's better than making $1. It's better than making
Yeah.
$1,000. It's better than making ten
Yeah.
thousand dollars. Like you can't measure that impact on what it does to here and that does
It's
to here.
what's funny is um I deal with a lot of very, very wealthy people. They're in my life. I spend time with them. Very, very wealthy people are some of the most unfulfilled people on the planet. And really what happens is let's say you have $3 million. Your lifestyle at 3 million to 10 million really doesn't change that much. I mean, how many more cars are you going to go buy? You're going to go buy a second house, third house, fifth house. Are you going to go on that many more vacations? And then really from 3 to 10, like all the way up to 100 million, your lifestyle really doesn't change. So what I did early on is I just set like limit. Like this is where my lifestyle is. Like, and I'll be satisfied. And by the way, I love cars. I love houses. I love all the fun things. I love experiences, and I get to do a lot of great things. But for me, I'm not about increasing my lifestyle. I may increase my convenience, right? Like I may maximize my time by how I fly or how I get transport or how are the people surrounding me and how I do life. Like somebody might look at it and go, well, why do you have so many assistants? Is it because of lifestyle? It has nothing to do with lifestyle. It has everything to do with productivity. Why do you fly on a
Yeah.
private jet? Well, is that a lifestyle thing? No, I value my time so much that why would I spend any time in an airport if I don't have to? It's like I'm constantly doing these things. I think people question because they think like, oh, he's just raising his lifestyle. I'm not. I'm trying to raise my productivity because in the end, the impact is where I actually get the value.
Mm, mm, mm. So, I have a question. How do you find good
Yeah.
talent?
One of my friends, Grant Cardone, Andrew and I were spending some time down there with him, and he challenged me in an area that I've always resisted, and it was one of personal brand. I always felt like if you need to know me, you'll know me. I don't need to put myself out there. And I was so cautious to never just like put myself out there. And Grant, you know, after I had the big $1 billion exit, we were down at his offices and he said, I think everything you want is on the other side of exposure. And I was like, I think everything I don't want is on the other side of exposure. I was like, I don't want to put myself out there. And he's like, no, I got a question. He's like, you've had all these exits. Why don't I know you? And I said, you know me. He was like, no, no, I know you. But like, if I got online, I wouldn't know you. He was like, I'd kind of find you, but I wouldn't know you. I don't know your story. And I was like, well, that's by design. I don't have a desire for anybody to know me. Like I love living kind of in the second place position in the shadows. Like that's a really comfortable place for me. And he was like, I'm going to challenge your thought. He said, do you ever need more money? I was like, yeah, we always need more money. He was like, well, how do you attract money? And I was like, I don't know. And he was like, well, if you had more exposure, money would find you. He was like, how do you attract good talent? I said, well, ads, whatever. I got an HR team. He was like, no, he said, if you had more exposure, people would find you. And he just starts like going down that list. And I was like, man, like he totally has me. And so I made a concerted effort about 2 years ago to begin to start to tell my story on social. I used to resist every podcast. I get so many invitations of podcasts to be like, nope, I'm out. I'm good. I don't like need to tell my story. I'll just keep doing my thing. And then 2 years ago, I started like accepting, like, okay. And I do 3 or 4 podcasts a week. It's like I'm on stages nonstop. I mean, I'll speak 70, 80 times this year on stages. And it's funny because how I attract great talent now is being authentic with myself in the open and out loud. What's interesting is as I've spoken more, as I've created my brand, I really don't have to recruit anymore. People find their way into my world. Like the amount of DMs that come through that say things, crazy things like, I will come work for you for free. And I will, it's like, I will, and every time we have an Aspire tour and there's 5,000 people in the audience, 10 or 20 or 30 of them will hand me a business card and go, if I could ever work for you, if I can ever. And so it's about being your authentic self and living it loudly enough that actually it attracts. One thing that I've learned is I don't want to chase people. If you chase people because you need them, it puts you at a disadvantage and it creates the wrong relationship. If you can ultimately sell your vision and allow people to chase you and your vision, it actually puts you in an advantageous position. Now I can actually craft the right relationship. We can set the right boundaries and standards. If I need you, I have to acquiesce sometimes. Now it's like, well, I'm letting you set the standard. I'm letting you set the boundary. And so all of that dynamic, and I definitely owe that to Grant because it changed my thinking. And I have gotten the result that I really like, which is a lot of people chase now. And, I've got a list of people that I would love to hire. And, as time and, opportunities and resources allow, I will.
That is the greatest answer I've ever heard, because one of the things that I never heard of that thing, but there was a thing in me before when I started this in general. I was like, I want to create because I've seen what people get when they create. Like I don't know what I'll get, but I've seen what
Sure.
people get. So it was like an internal decision, just start creating, 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 creating. I don't care who listens, the
Sure.
results will
And
come,
they always do.
and they always do. And it's not that when you want it to, it's when the
Yeah,
world wants you
yeah,
to.
it's crazy. I mean, and even to the degree that I'm about to launch a brand new podcast, it's very, very different. And it's just like I've been all over national news this year, and it's just like all of that has just been a snowball that I open myself up to, right? And I think the important part is just to open yourself up to it and allow the exposure to happen.
Allow the
Yeah,
exposure to happen. That's amazing. That's great advice. Great, great advice for everybody here. I tell people all the time, go
yeah,
start a podcast. You don't know what's
right,
going to happen
right,
down that road if you just
right.
go create.
Yep.
Go do something. Separate
Hmm.
yourself from everybody else. Just go create.
Hey, if you have any deals you'd like to submit to the Hive Mind and our team, go to hivebc.io. It's actually the Hive Buyers Club. Submit your deals and we can hopefully dispel your deal for you. Have a great day.